It's always nice for the people in a conference to come and see the speaker walk around and think how and when the conference will start. Good to see so many of you here. Very good evening to Milind and Navdeep, Vikas, Vilas. Please do introduce yourselves. Hello Anil, good to see so many familiar faces coming online. Hello Sandeep. Do share where you are all logging in from. Hope everyone is safe and things are nice around you. Hello Hamid, Sandeep, Nishant, Amit. Good to see you, Nishant. Lots of good friends, familiar faces. Neeraj, Girish, Ganesh, hi. Baha, hi Baha, how are you? Good to see you all. Lots of names. Hello Vikas, Shiv, Siddhant, hello Hema. Hi Sudhakar, thanks for the lovely introduction. Good to know you're working in Passive Fire. I will be in Mumbai in the week of 14th. Would love to connect up, maybe not coming to Gurgaon this time, but yes, we should connect. Thanks Sudhakar for the introduction.
Good evening to all of you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a great day of learning. A continuation of various webinars that we've been doing. So we are introducing new series on passive fire protection. So today is the series 1. All of you know that, when we always wish that when we read newspaper, there should be any fire accident and fire incident. Unfortunately, there is so many fire accidents are happening in hospitals especially. And you've seen how the fire spreads so quickly in most of the ICU fire incident that you've seen. A small spark that caused by an equipment spreads across. So what is the reason for this spreading of fire so quickly, quite rapidly in a building? We have all been talking all these years about active fire, what kind of suppression system, what kind of firefighting, what the NFPA talks about, what UL system talks about. We've been talking about so much about active fire. Very less spoken about containing the fire. How do I contain the fire? That is passive fire products. How important to have a good passive fire product. So not just having a passive fire product, somebody claiming 3 hours rating, somebody claiming 4 hour rating. How do you know the subject? If you see the last point, where can you get cheated? And what kind of question you need to ask? What kind of question you need to ask the manufacturer who claims that mine is fire safe material? So there's so much that we need to learn. And it's a great opportunity for all of us to put a little effort on understanding the process of what is fire protection, what are the basics of it, and how the supply chain of materials comes into building, and what are the test methods. So this is what that we are trying to cover up today. My name is Dominic. I've been in the fire industry now almost 36 years. And very passionately, running the Fire and Security Association of, they call it FSCI. Now very passionately taking forward the new initiative called Focus, Forum of Critical Utility Services, wherein we bring in all the critical services professionals together and make a powerful body. And we are going global, and you can keep watching what's happening in Focus. And I'm glad that Mr. Abhishek, the speaker of today, also part of this Focus movement. And very familiar face, ladies and gentlemen, the speaker of the day, Abhishek Chabra. Don't need much of introduction. He's been seen since last pandemic. He has come, at least he would have probably addressed more than 10 to 15,000 people through this virtual platform. But it's important for me to say a few lines about Abhishek. Abhishek is an engineer and a postgraduate diploma holder in finance. He has been advocating the need for compliance to standard to improve safety and quality across the industry for most of the last 2 decades. He has vast experience in promoting conformity assessment in several industries that include consumer electronics, industrial, renewable, and building products across geographies and jurisdictions. He has worked on several standard and codes development initiatives, especially with Bureau of Indian Standard, BIS, ASTM, UAE Fire and Life Safety Code of Practice, and Saudi standards. He is a regular speaker at facade and fire safety conferences, workshops by Society of Fire Protection Engineer and Insurance Industry. He has recently published an article, Does a large-scale fire propagation test ensure fire safety of cladding? So it was published in Journal of Council of Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat called CityBHU, which is headquartered in Chicago, and they're also quite active in India. So most of the tall buildings are member of this. Most of the well-known architects are part of City BHE. So his article is well accepted, well-read article. And those who are interested to know about this article, just send me a message. I can pass on those PDF documents to you. So since pandemic hit the world, he has been regularly delivering free education webinars such as this today, increasing the awareness about conformity mechanism for fire safety, fire passive protection. He joined Thomas Bell Wright International Consultant in 2013 and has been driving force behind the expansion of fire compliance activities into new markets. He has contributed certification bodies to expand their horizon of business. He also owns and drives a blog on LinkedIn group called Gurus of Testing, Inspection and Certification. It's called www.tic.guru, aimed at expanding the understanding of conformity across the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very honored to have him today to speak about the subject that I mentioned. I'm sure you're going to enjoy the next 30-40 minutes. And I request everyone to put your questions, if you have any questions, on the Q&A box. When we look below, there is a Q&A box there. You can put your questions. We try to answer as much as possible. So this will be 1.5 hour session, and I wish all the best to all the participants. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this session. Over to Abhishek.
Thank you, Dominic, for the nice, long, wonderful introduction. Pretty excited and happy to be here, as always. I've been sharing this with a lot of people as the fact that I am extremely passionate about passing on all that I have been learning, all that I have learned. And since last 8 years, I have been heavily involved in almost educating and driving better fire safety across the Gulf region, talking to lots and lots of government, semi-government members who are responsible for driving better compliance, who are responsible for writing technical regulations, as well as countless number of fire consultants, large contracting companies, and so on and so forth. And almost every time when I am talking about it to people around or delivering any session, I am reminded of the fact that being from India, I feel that there is a considerable gap, and I must do as much as I can to bridge the gap. I've been lucky to be good friends with Dominic, who relentlessly is spreading the word and increasing awareness about safety and quality across the board of the infrastructure built environment space. And today I very specifically talk to you about how a better implementation can be done by each one of you, each one of us, one small bit by bit, to make sure that the fires that happen do not become big fire accidents. I want all of you to kind of imagine, if you can. I did a quick search on the internet, and this is what comes up when I search fire in buildings in India. And I think most of you would have countless images, videos that you would record from your phones or see on your phones or the news about what really happens when a fire ravages a building, and so much that happens. Now, we know that we cannot really make a fire accident disappear. There will always and always be small accidents, small incidents that will trigger a fire inside a building, inside a house, inside a shop, inside an airport, inside a hotel, inside a hospital, any imaginable place that you can think of. There will be a source of a potential ignition and some or the other kind of mishap that will create a fire. So we can't really make a fire accident disappear. We know this. But what can we do? We can do one of several things. We can make sure that the fire gets detected very quickly. We can make sure that wherever the fire is happening, there should be a means of egress. The place can be evacuated quickly. We should have a mechanism that is able to extinguish the fire, whether it's a small mechanism like a fire extinguisher or a sprinkler system, or maybe have the fire brigade come in and take charge and control the fire and limit it so that the small incident, which will always happen, will not become into a big disaster. And we can all do this. And like, the caption of today's webinar is that we want to make sure that there is inherent fire safety built in, something that does not require electricity, something that does not require water, but make sure that this is able to protect. So what can we do? And I'm going to focus on these three aspects today. That what is it that will make sure that the infrastructure that we are in is protected from a fire, and if there is a fire incident, it is contained within the compartment, within the zone, within the section of where the fire has started. And if there is a small ingress of fire, it could be a matchstick falling on a carpet, or a short circuit happening in the corner of a house or a room, and one of so many possibilities, a stray candle, etc., etc., etc. We make sure that these fires are limited. So I want you all, wherever you are sitting, to take about 10 or 20 seconds to just look around you and just think where you are sitting. You could be in an office, you could be in the house, you could be sitting on a table, you could be sitting on a chair or a bed. Look around the room that you are in. And imagine if there is a fire that breaks out somewhere around you, what would happen? And please do this exercise with me. Just imagine, maybe there are windows around you. There should be hopefully a door somewhere around you. And you would see a roof, maybe a false ceiling, and you would know that there is a roof above. And I'm running a small video on your screen for you to imagine that, let's say, when there is a fire that gets initiated, how it spreads across the room. Are you with me? I hope you are all able to imagine, look around, just think of all the things that will burn, some things which will burn more quickly, some things that will burn less quickly. Where will the fire move? Will the fire be contained within the room where you are? Do you think the door, wherever it is able to lock the fire and smoke within the room? Will it burst out of the window? And I think all of this is very imaginable. You do not necessarily need a lot of science to understand whether the carpet, if you have a carpet around, will it burn faster than the table or the sofa or the chair or the couch? What will burn faster? What will burn slower? And this all forms the basis and the crux of how fire protection gets designed across the world in buildings. We have codes and standards and regulations and requirements which are detailed in hundreds of thousands of words and pages. But in basic essence, this is what we are looking at. We know there will be a fire. We have to understand from a very scientific point of view, how quickly can it be detected, controlled, design an egress so that everybody who can potentially be in harm's way can exit and evacuate. And on the other side, we have something which is called passive fire protection, which means if there is a carpet on the floor or a false ceiling or a decoration on the wall, that this will not make the fire run and grow quickly. What will be the fire load? How much fire that can grow? And when this fire is growing faster and quicker, we have elements in the room like a fire-rated door, fire-rated partition walls, fire-rated roofs, fire-rated perimeter fire barriers between the windows or the glazing and the floor. And all those elements are in place that will make sure that the fire is contained within the compartment that has been created. And this very simply is what is called passive fire protection. It usually gets grouped into 3 segments. Containment, which means if and when there is a fire, it should be containable either in a room or the floor or whatever methodology has been designed by a fire code, keeping in mind the occupancy type. Which means if you are in a hospital, the methodology to contain a fire will be very different as compared to if you are in a mall or an airport or a residential or commercial building or a place of worship. All these categorizations define how many people, what is the preparedness of these people to evacuate or to act when there is a fire. And all of this is beautifully captured and recorded in various building codes, whether it is the National Building Code of India or the International Building Code published out of North America, or one of several building codes around the world. These building codes will define how many hours should the containment of, let's say, the banquet hall of a hotel, which could seat 2,000 people, should function. How long will it take to evacuate people? How long will it take for the fire tenders to come in and control the fire? These are the factors which would typically drive and define whether you need a 3-hour rated wall or a 1-hour rated fire door, etc., etc. This is the crux of what is passive fire protection. All those materials, components, systems that don't do anything on their own. They don't activate. It's not a sprinkler. It's not a detection system. It's not a lighting system. It is the inherent property of material that will ensure that fire does not spread and remains contained in a small compartment so people can evacuate from other parts of the construction. Let's take a better look into what reaction resistance and all of this is about. I will start with materials, stuff that probably you can see around. Maybe you can see some table or pieces of paper on it. I am very sure you can see something which is around you in some form of plastic. And plastic is a big category, but you would definitely have paper somewhere inside, and you would have plastic somewhere inside. And I want you to understand and imagine, if you light up the piece of paper with a matchstick or a lighter, you will all agree with me that it ignites very, very quickly. And a plastic chair or a plastic bottle or a water dispenser may not necessarily ignite with the help of this lighter. And as you imagine the lighting up on fire, and I urge none of you to do this right now. Please don't try to light up something around you just to follow the webinar. The moment you can imagine this, you will realize that paper could ignite very quickly, but then not necessarily create a lot of energy. Its calorific value or the fuel load will be low. And on the other hand, some of the plastic, which may take a very, very long time to ignite, once it does ignite, its calorific value or the fuel load or the calories in it are so much higher, or could potentially be so much higher, that it can wreak havoc. So it is very critical and important to understand these two things are different but correlated. Something which has a very low ignition temperature may not necessarily be as dangerous, and something which has a very high ignition temperature could also be very dangerous, and how these things should not or should be put together. The carpet could have a very high combustibility, which means that the amount of material which has a low ignition temperature or a high calorific value is in a very high percentage. So certain types of carpets, as you can very quickly imagine, the moment they catch fire, they will very quickly transfer fire across a room. And it is important to understand how these are different for different products and materials, and which kinds of rooms, what level should be allowed. I hope you get the gist. And I move to my favorite subject, which is compartmentalization of fire. And very unfortunately, it is half understood or semi-understood by most of the people. And the ill result of this half understanding is that many a times developers, contractors, consultants, governments spend a lot of money defining that a room should have a 2-hour fire rated door. But if the wall is not fire rated, or if the mechanical, electrical, or plumbing MEP systems break in and cut open the fire rated wall and do not seal it back properly, then the huge amounts of money paid to manufacturers, some of whom are actually today in this session, is wasted. The image that you see on the right side of the screen shows a fully growing fire in one compartment or in one part of a room, where passive fire protection has been very well implemented. The walls, which have been tested and compliant, are installed correctly. You will see that above the false ceiling, there is an area where the fire is not moving. Adjacent, above, below, the fire remains contained properly. Let's understand how this needs to be done and how this is done properly. Some of you would have heard of the word fire stopping. Dominic is conducting another session later talking about Fire Stop Contractors Association. We'll talk about it more. But in a sense, every compartment, every room needs to breathe, have maybe HVAC ducts, needs electricity, needs internet, needs water, and the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems would always cut open and break all the compartments that have been designed and hopefully and properly installed and finished off. And this is where all these breaking or opening of compartments need to be sealed and contained properly. Whenever the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems need to be installed or need to cut open a compartment or a firewall, they need to be fire stopped or sealed back properly. So these three aspects of reaction and resistance and containment need to be done properly. Let's look into how is this actually and practically done in real life. And three aspects are important. Who is the manufacturer of the product? And you should at this time imagine a fire door, a partition wall, fire stopping products, all sorts of systems and materials that you see all around you, above, below, which are capable of creating this containment. We need to ratify and check whether these manufacturers are able to deliver the right product repeatedly. Not just test one product and give you a test report, but supply products that will always comply to what they claim to comply. Who installs these products? Are the installers capable? Are they trained? Is there someone checking their work? Or are you wasting money in designing and procuring very, very good products and getting them installed wrongly, wasting all of the money spent? And most important, if you are paying somebody, if you are a developer, a contractor, if you are paying somebody, are they liable for ensuring what they are delivering? And is that liability somewhere written on a piece of contract or a document? Is there money attached to it? There better be money attached to it. Just to aid your imagination so that you better understand what I am talking of, imagine, as in the top left corner of your screens, you see a fire door being tested, which means the fire door is installed with a furnace behind, and fire leaking out, which means the fire is not being contained. And below you see images of systems and products like a fire door or a glazing system that is supposed to implement or contain the fire. And then imagine all that goes behind it. Who is manufacturing using boards, wood, sheet metal, hardware, etc., etc. We need to find a mechanism to ensure that this is being done correctly and repeatably. Exactly the same set of things I want you to imagine for anything and everything that you look around. Interior, finishing materials and products, upholstery, carpets, flooring, false ceiling, furnishing done on the walls, wallpaper. Will they catch fire? Maybe, maybe not. But where are they manufactured? How are they manufactured? Is there a quality assurance mechanism in place or not? Structural fire protection is a subject which is probably for another presentation. But whenever a fully developed fire is attacking the structure of a building, like the world saw when the tragedy of 9/11 happened, and this is a video of the building which is in the place of the tragedy which happened 9/11, the world realized and understood much better that when the fire temperature is beyond, let's say, 500, 600 degrees for a prolonged amount of time, the structure can potentially collapse. And hence, a lot of coatings, intumescents, and many other methodologies and products, sometimes boards, are used to bolster the structural strength of columns and beams to make sure that there is structural strength in the building. How is this evaluated? How is this tested? If a column is slightly rusted and the intumescent is coated on top, and the intumescent is not able to hold correctly to the column, then procuring the column, paying through your nose for the intumescent coatings probably imported internationally, and paying someone to install it incorrectly is losing all the money. So it is critical and important to understand this. And I cannot impress less upon misunderstanding of through penetrations and the amount of money spent to it. Roughly 35% contract value of any construction is spent on MEP, 35%. So if you spend 100 crores in building something, you spend 35 crore rupees in MEP. And having a wrong installer, an ill-qualified installer, will break the through penetrations, the compartment, and do not fill it properly. So imagine the impact. So it is critical to understand how the installations are done, whether they are certified and listed. Is there an inspector involved to check and make sure that these are being installed correctly or not? Why is this important? And I want to bring your eyes back to manufacturing as a process. And a lot of people are, it's easy for people to imagine that this is how fire doors might be manufactured. It's like a automotive production line. Everything is happening on its own, minimal automation, minimal intervention, everything automated. But reality is very different. I would welcome, and I know there are some fire door manufacturers here, and I hope they don't get offended, but manufacturing and assembling a fire door has a lot of manual work, not just in India, but worldwide. Using the sealants, using intumescent strips, using loads and loads of components which really bring about fire resistance, if done incorrectly, would produce a different door. So it is important that there is somebody overseeing and ensuring that this process is done correctly. The same goes for installation. And this is an extremely important work, often misunderstood. The liability that a fire door will perform as a fire door primarily goes on the manufacturer of the fire door. The same manufacturer who will install the fire door correctly, very, very well, in a laboratory to test it. And it can be your guess that the experts who will install the fire door inside a laboratory, when they are spending a few lakh rupees to test it, who these installers will be, what will be their capability, and does this equate with the capability of the installers in the construction site? And if it does not equate, then as I said, all the money being spent is probably being wasted. So it is critical for you to know and understand that the liability, which typically comes from an installation process, which has to be issued ideally by the manufacturer, is verified, and there is some mechanism to assure it. Which brings me to the last section of today's conversation and discussion, which is assurance mechanisms. How do you make sure wherever you are, you could be a manufacturer, you could be a buyer, you could be a seller, you could be a contractor, you could be a consultant, you could be a property dealer, you could be an insurer. There are so many people today in today's session. Well, we could start with just the basics, have a building code and follow it to the T, exactly, correctly. And in every building code, you will see test methods, like what are the test methods that are used to check and validate compartmentalization. I'll show you an example. This is a fire resistance furnace. This is from our laboratory. It is a 3 meter by 3 meter opening where a fire scene or a fire load is recreated. And how this recreation works is that just this image that you saw, this face is closed off with a wall. The wall could have fire doors installed. The wall could have dampers installed. It could have any kind of through penetration, glazing system installed. And we run the furnace through what is called a time temperature curve. The graph that you see on the left shows the rate at which the temperature is rising. There are other aspects like pressure, negative, positive. I will not go into those details today, but typically within 20 minutes or so, the temperature crosses between 700 to 900 degrees Celsius. This is a fully developed fire, a fire which is considered out of control. And this is how the conditions are created or recreated. And a typical test method, which could be a British standard, an American standard, a European standard, or an Indian standard, the IS 3614, would recreate such a scenario. Now, I want to ask a quick question, and people can reply back in the chat as quickly as you can. How many people in the audience would have seen a test report for a fire door? Can I have some quick answers in the Q&A, not in the Q&A, but in the chat box? How many people, 1, 2, how many people have seen a test report? Never. I like that answer. Anybody else? Are there just 2 people in the audience who have tested? Sudhakar, good to know. CBRI. Rajesh, Sudhir, no. Anybody else who has seen? Yes, no. Okay, I see 4 people, 5 people, 6 people who have seen a test report. Oh, fantastic. Lots of no's, some yeses. We asked for a test report, but not shared by vendor. That's very sad, Shubham. Please don't give them the money. Anybody else who has seen a fire door test report? Okay, because there are lots of people who've never seen a fire test report, you are in luck. I'm going to share one with you on the screen. And thanks, Nitin and Ram, Ramalingam, Sheikh. Good to get your answers. Vikas, you have seen one. Very good, Vikas. And all the people who've seen a test report, I want you to put your eyes on the screen and notice that which of these aspects did you ever see, which are very important. When was the test conducted? What was the test standard? Did you notice the accreditation? Which is the body like United Kingdom Accreditation Services or NABL from India or any other accreditation body who is checking how the laboratory is able to repeatably conduct the test? And I'm bringing out these things because all the people who have seen a test report and all of you who may have never seen a test report must ensure that you check when was the test conducted, as per which standard, who were the people who were witnessing the tests. And very, very importantly, understanding the construction defined in the test. For example, if it is a fire-rated door, what was the size? How was the product defined in the test report? And very important, most important, where did the door come from? Was there anybody involved in making sure that the door has been sampled? Was it conditioned in a specific environment for a long duration of time? This is all very, very important because you, at a point of time, need to compare this with what will be supplied. This is probably the only proof or the only assurance mechanism that you may have for comparing what will come on the construction site or what is on the construction site versus the proof that you are getting from a supplier, from a manufacturer, that my fire door will function as a fire-rated compartment element and make sure that the fire will be contained by this fire door. And this is extremely important because if it doesn't do it, then what is the point? So once you understand and very well understand how this fire door works, you will have a better appreciation of how this functions. In the National Building Code of India, there are several Indian test methods which are defined, which mandate compliance requirements or which define how these tests should be performed. And I'm very excited and happy to share that as a laboratory, we have been internationally recognized and accredited, which means someone from United Kingdom as an accreditation body comes and audits us, ensuring repeatability in being able to test as per these Indian standards. We are probably the only UCAS accredited laboratory in the whole world, I must say, who can test as per 10 Indian standards, which are referenced in the National Building Code. And not only can we test them, we can issue certification and listing on our certification directory, which means that we undergo or we undertake a process of going to the manufacturer's premises, witnessing how the product is being manufactured, and then not only test the traced product, which could be the fire door, we go back to the manufacturing location and we audit them each time. And all those details get listed on the certification directory. So as a buyer, as a verifier, you can look up that the product has been tested to UL 10C, for example, as an American standard or an NFPA standard, or an Indian standard IS 13614, and it is complying with these details, this size, this dimension, this hardware. And if any of these things which are listed on the certification directory as an open certification directory, then the third-party body is not taking assurance of the performance of the product. And you're all welcome to look at our certification directory, TBW Cert, www.tbwcert.com. And you can look up how the products which are listed look like. And all this details of listing is then verifiable at the construction site. Not only will we have a certification label, which will link to the directory, but it will also provide all those details which are important for you to look at the drawing and then look at the construction site and see whether the product has been listed in the same way. And these listing details are for everything. They could be fire stopping, what is the gap, what is the thickness, all sorts of details which you probably should be asking. So just to make sure that you do not get cheated throughout the course of process where passive fire protection, something that will ensure the life safety of people, is being procured correctly, you have the right assurance mechanism. And these are some of the questions you should be asking. Where is the product manufactured? What is the evidence? Is it just a test report? Or is there someone visiting the certificate? Is there someone certifying the factory to make that product over and over again? Who is installing it? Are they having some kind of liability warranty? This is the last slide. I will now open the floor for all the questions. I know many questions have been coming in, and I'll very quickly give a quick background about the company. We've been around for 27 years, mainly doing and still doing curtain wall testing, but a considerable portion of our existence as a company does fire testing We have 4 large furnaces, horizontal, vertical, load-bearing furnaces to do fire resistance testing as per American standards, British standards, as well as I said, Indian standards. We have been the subcontract laboratory for UL, for Intertek, for Warrington Fire, and we have the largest capability to do small-scale reaction to fire tests, as well as very large-scale fire propagation tests for cladding. And that's a quick background. I'm going to now let all the people in the audience take down my details, and I'm going to try and go through all the questions that you have asked, and I'll only answer the easy ones, right? So is there anything in the Q&A, or people have just put in their questions in the chat? I would urge anybody who wants me to look at answering some of the questions, please put the questions on the Q&A. It's very difficult to go through the chat because chat has all sorts of messages. So let me start with some of the questions.
Abhishek, we have a wonderful audience here. So we also fortunate to have Mr. T.R.A. Krishnan. He had a couple of doubts, but we are just speaking to him on WhatsApp. There's 1 or 2 questions that probably he may also like to answer regarding the escape route and all that. So he's there, but unfortunately, his mic on the computer is not working. So
okay.
We'll take it in case it is required. I'll call him on that phone. So should we go on the question answer?
Yes. Let's look at that. Let's absolutely look at. Shall I read through directly?
I will pick up one on the chat.
Okay.
The one Mr. Ganesh Karath is asking, I request to give fire load and occupant load, but contractor don't know about this. To give details on fire load and occupant load.
Well, this is a bit vague, but I'll try to answer that. The fire load, or the calculation of fire load, is first of all directly related to the occupancy type, which means what is the occupancy type? Is it a hotel? Is it a hospital? Is it a commercial building, residential building, place of worship, merchandise, industrial? Tons of variations are there. But fire load needs to be calculated by a fire consultant by considering what all is there inside. It is something that I would not be able to answer that. I think the question I see in a chat by Gajanan as well. This is something, sorry, that I cannot really answer. But let's first focus at the Q&A in the Q&A box.
Okay.
And let me start with
Vilas.
With Vilas, how far concrete wall is correct compared to the MOC of the isolation wall? You are talking about, I don't know what MOC is, but I must share that a concrete wall may or may not be fire rated. We have had concrete walls or concrete block work spall and burst open. So the mixed design, which is the composition of concrete in terms of cement and what all is there, could vary, and the wall may not be fire rated. How fire rated fan comes in this picture? Tanmoy, I don't know what a fire rated fan is, and I think probably there is a mix up in terminology. The term fire rated is either for a material or a system that can create a containment zone, like a fire rated wall or a door or a partition, or a fire rating is given to structural elements like columns and beams, which could be coated with SFRM or intumescent or so many things, so that the structure can withstand a fully developed fire for 2 hours or 3 hours or certain minutes. Maybe you can drop me an email, Tanmoy, you have my email address, and we can talk further about fire rated fan and what it really means in the context that you're talking of.
So Abhishek, MOC means material of construction.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification, but yeah, Vilas, the answer remains. Sandeep Parmar is talking about it is also insulation type material. Well, any insulation material alone may not be fire rated. It is always evaluated for reaction to fire characteristics, which means whether the fire can grow through the insulation material. Hema has a question which is a code related question. It's not something related to passive fire protection, something which I think I'm an expert of. Hema is asking, if we have a fire at the ground floor of a building, how to evacuate. Hema, it's a good question. I'll point you to sections of National Building Code or International Building Code, which defines that where occupancy is inside a building and how egress or exit paths need to be designed so that people can be evacuated when there is a fire. Sandeep Parmar has another question. How many times test fire door for a year? At the outset, Sandeep, a fire door needs to be installed in a building and it cannot really be removed to be tested for fire or whether it can contain a fire. If 130 doors are supplied into, let's say, a commercial building on a hotel, they all need to have an assurance mechanism that all of 130 doors are designed and manufactured and installed correctly so that they function. Fire curtains come under passive fire protection, asks Hema. Yes, absolutely. And fire curtain needs to be evaluated both on the fact that they can deploy correctly as well as they can contain correctly. Tanmoy has a question. Do you have a plan in the future to test fans as per EN 12103? No, sir, we do not have that plan at this time. Anonymous attendee is writing something which is not a question. Let's have the names of whoever wants to ask a question. Nisant has asked a question about interior finish. Nisant, I did not get the question about what about interior finish. You can ask the question again. I'm trying to understand the question from Rajesh Bhise. What is the standard procedure to check fire sill for services on site? Rajesh ji, if you could just elaborate on the question, it will be very helpful for me. Shubham Patil wants to know, in a passive fire protection, how could one decide the use of glass wetting sprinkler or window sprinkler to protect the glass facade? I would point you to a specialist fire consultant. Shubham, this is not something that I would be able to answer, but there are some fire rated glass which are able to provide containment and should be used when there is a requirement. Tanmoy asks, what is the difference between smoke and fire curtain? Which one to specify? Tanmoy, very simple and very important to know. We need to first of all contain fire and smoke together, and depending on the type of occupancy, you will need to specify one or the other. Hirosh Kurian wants to know how to get a test report for building cladding materials. Hirosh, you have the email address. Just send me an email and I will tell you building cladding materials is an area of expertise and I can speak for 3 hours about it. So Hirosh, I'd love to hear back from you. Any other questions, Dominic, you think we can pick up from the chat?
Chat, there are few. Okay. Then go back.
And maybe if you mentioned there is somebody in the audience or as a listener who may want to have a open mic session, we can have a kind of an interaction as well. I can see that Ganesh Kharatmal was there, or probably still there, from the Maharashtra Airport Development Company in Nagpur, Chief Fire Officer. Would love to have an interaction with you, sir. Girish, I'm sure Dominic would have sent you the CTBUH paper that I published. Thank you so much for reaching out. Trying to look if there is any other question before Dominic can take back the mic from me. Vilas Wadhone, you have a question. I'm going to read out and then think if I can answer. We have an 18th floor building, and in case of fire, evacuation is via staircase. The passage from each floor to the staircase has a wooden door having door closure arrangement. Do you have to install fire doors? It will be very expensive and heavy door. First of all, Vilas, the answer is yes. I don't know what is the occupancy type, but the staircase, which is the egress path, usually needs to be pressurized so that the fire does not get into the evacuation staircase. So the fire rated doors need to be installed, because if there is no fire rated door, you could have fire break into the staircase compartment or smoke come into the staircase compartment, and it will block the only exit paths, potentially suffocating people who are trying to evacuate. It will be very expensive. This is very contentious and very open-ended discussion, and I'm not sure what is the amount of money that equates to the life of the people in the 18th floor building. Sudhakar Verma talked about a door getting tested in another laboratory. I would welcome you to our laboratory, sir. Please do come and see us here. Someone by the name Maharaja talks about some of the fire rated steel doors do not have intumescent strips. The only way to validate a fire door is not just to check an intumescent strip. I think it needs to be tested and at least listed to get that assurance. Let me see if there is any other question. What is the minimum width of a fire door for staircase areas? Sudhakar, I'm sorry, this is a code related question depending on the type of building. Shubham Patil wants to know more about glass facade with fire ratings. Shubham, please send an email if you can. I think this is a good detailed subject. Maybe we can have a chat sometime offline. Okay, last two questions that I can take.
I think Mr. Khiari Krishna has answered to one of the questions.
Oh, that's nice. Let me read towards the end, and maybe there are some questions. Thank you, Krishnan sir, for the help. Some of the questions I must like to kind of try and give a holistic answer or a larger answer, considering that we are above the hour that we had targeted for today's session. For buildings in India, as fire safety is a state subject and not a federal subject, the requirements vary from state to state, and each state's fire departments have been known to create their own laws. And this said, in our country, in India, the requirements to assure fire safety are often driven by different stakeholders. So as an example, when it comes to an airport, which is typically an international or even a national airport, several international consultants will use standards which are published specifically for airports, and the requirements get filtered down as to what is the fire rating requirement, in which zone, in which section, fire side, air side, etc. Many a times, standards or test methods and conformity methods are also defined in specifications. Often you will get listed in certified doors as a requirement. These requirements vary when it comes to industrial use or factories, and commercial as well as residential areas. So I think a lot of requirements are driven down by codes, but in general, test reports are one of the older mechanisms for assurance, and test reports have been getting a lot of holes punched into them because a test report does not usually define how many products of the same type failed before that test passed. And many a times for users and buyers, it is difficult to correlate what was tested versus what will be supplied or what is supplied, creating a massive gap. So that brings me to trying to answer all the questions. I can see there is some chat between Hirosh Kurian, 1.2 meters. I'm not sure, but yeah. So any last question for the day, which will be typed in, and I will pick that up. Thank you, Sheikh. Thank you, Maharaja. All right, Dominic, I think we've had a very interesting session, some very, very good questions. Maybe if we can get the mic working of Mr. Krishnan, we would love to hear from him.
And I think yes, so he texted me that he's unable to speak today. But however, I'm very happy that people from Bullet Train, which is coming up between Ahmedabad and Mumbai, they are there participating. We have a lot of Adani group which is managing the airports. They are there today listening to you. And I'm sure whatever knowledge that you have shared will be useful to India and to improve the Indian standard. So, and most interesting is next session, that is our second series, which is happening on 3rd March. We are going to talk about Indian standard on fire testing. So here's a very comprehensive presentation on how we test as per the Indian standard. So I have already shared you the link. Those who wish to join for that second series, definitely you can register now. And some of them asked me whether I'll get a certificate. Yes, of course, we can issue a soft copy attendance, certificate of attendance for this series. Just email me your name, the way you want that to be in a certificate. We will definitely issue a certificate. And my request, my friends, those who couldn't join today, maybe you could share the next webinar link. I will also be sharing the video record of this session to all those people who have participated and also registered but unable to join in today. So we will share the details of today's webinar to all the participants. So it's a continuous process of learning, educating ourselves to make our nation Surakshit Bharat, and every building need to be safe. Wherever we move around, whether it's a mall or the theater or the public places, we have to start questioning, are we safe in this building? The flat that you're buying, the apartment you're buying, are they safe? You start questioning. I'm sure the awareness that goes into the builder, they will ensure that passive fire is rightly implemented in those buildings. The more the question you ask to the end user, the more the awareness and the goal of Surakshit Bharat also can be achieved. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for wonderful.
I will interrupt you, Dominic. I see that I wanted to share two things before we close the session. One, I'm going to address the question that Maharaja has been asking, but I must share with everybody who's listening in that I am very excited about the next event, which is going to be a very interesting one. The testing as per the Indian standards. In the last 1 year, we have been interacting with many manufacturers, many contractors, consultants, clients, developers. They have all been very, very excited to know that you can now have a listing from a certification body, almost like people get listing to international standards from international certification bodies. I'm excited to say that there are already certain manufacturers of fire doors and partition and glazing systems who are talking to us. They are very excited. Some of them might be converting a certification to an Indian standard very, very soon. Coming back to the question with Mr. Maharaja has been asking, is that how come a steel door can be without an interment strip? This is something that I do not kind of mean to say. I'm sorry if I missaid that a steel door can be manufactured without an intermittent or interment strip. I want to claim, and I want to say this with a lot of confidence, that inspecting just the intumescent strip or some component on the construction site is not proof enough that the fire door is a fire door. And if you are seeing any certifications, any test report, I insist, and you should insist, to find a way to correlate this certificate or test report with the door or with the product on the site. A large number of times, because this question is not asked, you get a test report or you get a certificate or you see the certificate on the directory of the certification or the website of the supplier, and you think having the certificate is proof that they will supply all doors to be fire rated. And mind you, this is the biggest misconception. We need to ask and validate what is being supplied to your site. Having the brand name of a given manufacturer on a fire door will not in any way give you the assurance, because inside the factory of a manufacturer, whether it is a fire door or anything else, there are hundreds of different designs and types of products that are manufactured. So it is very critical that you see the certification and listing on the certification directory. I will share a very common example in the chat right now. If you open the link tbwcert.com and select Scheme 1, you will see a very large number of fire door certificates. See the detail of the door complying with, let's say, UL 10C or EN standard, and is that detail is enough for you to go back to the construction site and validate that yes, this product still is the same as I was promised. I hope I did not. Thank you, Maharaja. I'm glad that I'm able to address your question. It makes me feel bad if somebody says, hey, my question is not answered. But if there is anybody else who thinks I have not been able to give justice to today's session, please send me an email. You have my email address, and I will be more than happy to reply to you. And thank you, Dominic, for bringing all of us together in today's wonderful session. All yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Look forward to see you again on 3rd March. We're going to talk about Indian standard. So Have a wonderful day. Good weekend.
Super.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.